Welcome back as we stay with our topic of the 2014 bicentenary of the Christian message arriving in this country. Several years ago, a special part of that history was shared with the pupils of Matamata Primary School when they were chosen for the official launch of a children's book written by esteemed New Zealand author Joy Cowley. The book tells the story of a young Maori girl whose love for God became an inspiration for the generations to come. From our archives, the story of Tarore.
Haere mai, whakaronga mai. This is the story of a young girl who brought peace and a new way of living to the iwi of Aotearoa. The girl's name was Tarore and she lived near Waharoa. Te Waharoa, the famous warrior chief of Ngāti Haua of the Waikato, was her great uncle. Ngā Kuku, his nephew, was her father. Tarore was a story that absolutely filled me up passionately.
The Kapahaka group from Matamata Primary welcome iconic New Zealand author Joy Cowley to their school to launch a new book telling the story of Tarore, the little Maori girl whose love and knowledge of the Bible brought peace and reconciliation to pre-Waitangi New Zealand. The project is backed by the Bible Society. Bible engagement advocate Stephen Opie.
It's been a huge project. We've worked on this for over a year. So it's incredible to be here today to give out the books, the first books in New Zealand to these kids. It's a really, it's been a long project, but really it's been up to God's timing, and that all came together at the beginning of this year with Joy Cowley coming on board, and it just seemed, everything just seemed to fall into place, and it really has been God's timing.
Petrea Medland is the National Manager of the Church's Education Commission.
Well, it's been great working with the Bible Society. We've been able to coordinate a little about how the publication would look and what was suitable for schools. It's a Kiwi story. It's a story from Aotearoa. It's a story that can unite us, regardless of our culture, our ethnicity. Love and forgiveness is a value that we all want to permeate, surely. So that story has got great opportunity to impact our society.
When Ngā Kuku found his daughter's body, he was overwhelmed with grief. Now, in the old days, he would have demanded utu, the payment of a life for a life. But Ihukaraiti had said in the book that revenge was not the way. Love your enemies, he had said. Forgive and you will be forgiven. It is astonishing. I didn't know about it. I'd heard her name mentioned. But it wasn't until Stephen sent me the material about her and asked me to write the story. When I started reading it, it filled me up. I thought, this is a miracle. This is the little grain of wheat that died, that Jesus talked about, to yield a rich harvest.
She was only 12, wasn't she?
She was only 12.
Do you think we have something to learn from Tarore as a nation today?
Her story is so important for any time, and particularly today where we need to go back to the gospel values and look what Jesus said about forgiveness and peace, and how often he said it. He repeated it over and over. Sometimes we tend to pick up on something that he mentioned just once or twice, but the messages that he kept repeating, and forgiveness. You know, forgiveness is not so much about the other person, it's about releasing ourselves from the bondage of judgmental attitudes and resentment and bitterness that keeps us in a small, narrow place. I think it was Mahatma Gandhi who said, "An eye for an eye is a terrible way to make the whole world blind." And it's true, isn't it? The message of peace, of forgiveness, and the way that message spread. That's the extraordinary part. Nobody could ever describe it as anything but miraculous. It had to come from something that was a lot greater than the people concerned.
The day before the launch, an informal service was held at Tarore's gravesite in the countryside just outside Matamata. The original story was illustrated 100 years ago by Mary Glover Bibby, and her descendants were there too.
I understood this was the first Christian burial for Ngāti Hara.
Was it?
Yes.
I'm Claire Bibby and I'm her great-granddaughter. I'm writing a biography of Mary at the moment, and very much supported by my aunts and other members of the family. And it's interesting to see that she came from an artistic background. Her mother was surrounded by artists, and she was an artist herself.
I'm Rachel Hornblow, and I would be the second grandchild that was born to her. And I can remember her because she didn't die till I was 9. She was a delightful gran. She could enrich the life of a young person, or someone old, or someone of any type at all.
She came to New Zealand in 1891, and we have probably more than 200 images of hers, paintings, sketches, artworks in the family. We're at the moment photographing them and cataloguing them and sharing the stories about how they came into each member of the family. None of them have ever been bought or sold. They've always been gifts, and I guess that's her gift to us. Really, very much so.
At Waharoa, there is a small grave with a white picket fence around it. This is the last resting place of a 12-year-old girl who changed the lives of her people with her book of peace. Kia tau iho te rangamari e, kia koto katoa. Peace be with you all. Thank you.